I think it's like being authentic and and you can never expect to um be happy all the time. That's like not even real. It so in order to be authentically joyful, you are what's the you, you're intimately aware of human suffering.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick Rodell. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Sharon Robinson. Sharon is originally from the United States, where she lived mostly in the Southeast. She was a physical therapist living in Georgia when she had her two birth children with midwives in South Carolina. A few years after they were born, she felt called to study midwifery herself. After graduating with a master's degree in midwifery from SUNY downstate in Brooklyn, she and her family went to Cambodia. While in Cambodia, Sharon also worked alongside a Cambodian midwife, providing care to some of the pregnant women she met through her work in the community. After Cambodia, she and her family, then plus one adopted Cambodian son, moved to New Zealand, where she hoped she could provide midwifery care in a way that aligned with her calling. She has now practiced midwifery in New Zealand for over 20 years and is a strong advocate for women's choice. She has also traveled quite extensively assisting women with births in Tonga, Mexico, and the Amazon jungle in Peru. Sharon has recently been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and she reports being well. In fact, she says she is happier than she's been since she was a child. That is fascinating, and we'll hopefully hear more about that. Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah,
Great.
I'm doing okay.
It's good to see you, and I'm happy that you've taken the time out of your life to share with us your wisdom, your perspective on what a good life is and what living well means. I think it's very interesting that your background as a midwife, bringing life into the world, being there, guiding, facilitating that process, having children yourself, and then also facilitating that process for others for so many years. I'm very curious to pick your brain about your views about life itself, particularly with that type of background. Now, I know
I have lots of stories, that's for sure. Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, hopefully some of those will come out in our discussion here today. I know I just read that bio. Nonetheless, I do like to ask guests to um, introduce themselves, share a little bit about themselves in a way that's, a bio is a little bit scripted, a little different. So let's see what you have to say about yourself in this moment.
Who, where to start? Um, so yeah, hmm. I'm living in New Zealand. I have a clinic room that's in my house, and it's a very special place because I've got lots of things that remind me of my life, my children, yeah, lots of things. And I have recently had some time off of midwifery. Well, kind of. I never being a midwife in like at your core, you never are off. It's who you are, or at least that's how it is for me. Um, but when I was diagnosed with cancer less than a year ago, um, with stage 4 cancer, I immediately decided that I needed to stop working, at least for a while. And I just felt a bit distracted. And I explain it was a bit like reality vertigo because I had I had and I still have no symptoms of
Mm.
this, cancer. It's almost like I'm riddled with it from the scans and what they say. I've got cancer in my spine, thoracic spine, lumbar spine, my sacrum, other parts of my pelvis, even my skull. And they just keep asking me, "Do you have pain?" And my answer is yes. My shoulder hurts. I have had two surgeries on my shoulder, but I have no pain where they say that I have cancer.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I took some time off to kind of land again with this new bit of information thrown into my reality. Um, and I kind of came to the realization that lots of people get diagnosed with things that aren't going to go away or aren't, you don't expect that they'll go away, diabetes, for example. And so, yeah, I just thought within a couple of days that I told myself, Sharon, you've got to enjoy your life.
Hmm.
And you've got to let all the things that I've got in my head that I roll around and think about and feel distressed about. And I've got a few of them, and they're significant. But I don't have time to do that anymore. I've got to put them down. And yeah, because I just, I've spent too much time distressed about things, and I've come to think of them as the prickly pears from the Jungle Book song. I don't know if you remember the old Jungle Book when Baloo the bear is singing to Mowgli the little boy about when you get a hold of a prickly pear, you got to hold it with the claw, and like you just don't, that doesn't feel very good, so be careful with it. And actually, so yeah, I'm back working, and I spent 2 months in Tonga before I came back to work. And I grew up in Tonga as a child. It's an island in the South Pacific near Fiji and Samoa. I lived there from 7 to 10 years old, and I went there and got registered as a midwife and met with some obstacles and found ways to support a couple of women well. Um,
Hmm.
that's some stories there. I swam with whales. I've done that before, and I did that 4 times. That's my cancer treatment is living well. So maybe
Hmm.
that's enough for now. There's so much I
Hmm.
could tell you, but we'll got to start somewhere. So thank you
Right.
for inviting me.
I'm, of course, I'm very grateful that you're here. And yeah, thanks for being so open and transparent about your experience. And yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying about the choices that you've making after this diagnosis. Well, first of all, seeing yourself as a midwife all the time.
Oh
I
yeah.
have a friend who
It,
who who is a midwife, and she's like, "You're always on call, and you're always thinking about your the women that you're working with." So I definitely understand that, at least from a uh, outside perspective. But also just thank you for opening up and sharing about your diagnosis, and your response to it to me is very interesting, fascinating, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that and how you are responding to this diagnosis, and asking yourself those hard questions and then making a choice to relate to your diagnosis, your in this particular way. So speaking of which, I asked from the very beginning, but I think I would like to hear more about this relationship that you have with this diagnosis.
yeah.
So what does living well mean to you?
Well, I was thinking about that before we got on this morning, and I think it's like being authentic, and you can never expect to um, be happy all the time. That's like not even real. It
Hmm.
it so in order to be authentically joyful, you are, what's the, you're intimately aware of human suffering.
Mm.
Um, and in that awareness, I choose to bring forth love and compassion into the world.
Mm.
And for me, whatever it is that is divine, or um, if you, some people call it God, some people call it creator, some people are scientific in their approach to life and don't think there's anything um, like a universal consciousness. I toy with all the different ideas, but I tend to think that whatever it is that connects us with each other is what helps me feel alive in a meaningful and way that I feel a lot of life force coming through me. That I'm not, I call it spiritually constipated. Sometimes I get there, and I just think, what am I doing here? What's the point of all this? And, everything looks dark. But actually, there are strategies, I guess, that I've learned for me that, you know, clear out the constipation and get the energy flowing in a way that I'm glad to be here.
Mm.
Um, and that's with connect for me. It's with connections with other people, mostly like nature, art, creativity. Um, a lot of the things that schools tend to think are not important are actually very important for us to
Mhm.
live uh, a good life, whatever that is. And I was thinking this morning, somebody told me once that, if you're in a crowd of people and you notice the person who's laughing the loudest, they have probably experienced the most suffering of all the people in the room.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I have lived an amazing life, and I'm continuing to do that. And it involves purpose. That you've got a purpose that you have felt and you followed. And yeah, it's of course about my relationship with my husband. We're about to celebrate 35 years together. It's the
Mm.
second marriage for both of us. Um, he's 82 and I'm 61. And I always thought that I would be around and take care of him. And now who knows, like,
Mm.
um, I remember shortly after being diagnosed, we were standing in the kitchen and he was hugging me and we are just standing there and I started to cry and I said, I'm sorry. And he just said, I'm sorry too. And we just stood there and
Mm.
cried. So it's not blocking the feelings. It's about allowing yourself to feel the feelings.
Mm.
And like I've told people with this diagnosis, it has come with so many gifts attached to it. It's incredible. Uh, I have learned that my children love me deeply, and not that I didn't know that, but I really know it now.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I have a daughter in Scotland who has, since she was 6 years old, talked about her wedding, what her wedding was going to be like. She had this dreams. And she finally met this amazing Scottish man. She lives in Scotland. We love him. He's a power lifter. She's a power lifter. She's a physio. I was a physio. My husband's a retired physio. Um, and they're getting married next year. And within a week or so of me being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she's on a video call with me and said, Mom, right, Kieran and I have decided to cancel the wedding. We're going to go down to the registrar's office and just get married. I'm going to sell my, she has like a 2-bedroom townhouse type flat. I'm going to sell it. I've been talking to my old boss in New Zealand about, I can work there again. We're going to move back to New Zealand, blah, blah, blah. And I'm listening to her and I was like, Sarah, please, this is not a good time to make big decisions. We need to get some more information. We need to, see what to expect. Please just slow down. And knowing the dream she was willing to give up to come home and be with Mom, And yeah, and I said to her, and Sarah, I'm just so excited about that wedding next year. Don't take that away from me, and don't give it up yourself. So I can't think of anything she could have said that would have made me know more that she loves me and how important I am to her. And because I always beat myself up about all the stupid things that I forgot to pick her up when she was 9 years old from school, and I told her I was going to pick her up, and the principal brought her to our house in the rain. She'd been standing out in the rain. And I was thinking I'm a terrible mother about when I was in such a hurry for her 17th birthday. I accidentally bought her a get well card instead of a birthday card. She opens it up and she's like, Mom, this is the get well card. So every year she gets a get well card for her birthday from me now. I have to give up beating myself up for not doing this well enough or that well enough. When I told her, I apologized about the not picking her up in the rain when she was an adult. And she was like, Mom, do you think that's the worst thing you ever did? That is nothing. So yeah. And then our oldest child lives not, out of town and was here with us for appointments. And we went out to lunch after I got told that I had stage 4 cancer. And we're sitting outside at a picnic table type thing. And he just scoots in next to me at the table after the appointment. And he said, Mom, I know that you always thought that you were going to take care of Dad, and that was your plan, and you didn't mind it. It was what you wanted to do. There was no question that was what you're going to do. And Mom, I just need you to know that there are others of us who love Dad too. And I needed to hear that, So, these are some of the blessings that I can just let go of all the things I felt like I didn't do good enough. I didn't do well enough. I failed at this or whatever. I did pretty damn good to have kids like that. And even I have a son who is estranged from us after some real difficult times, my adopted son, and he even responded to some emails, recently. We're maybe making progress, I hope. Yeah. But for him to do that after what's happened, I'm sure he loves me too in his own ways. So, yeah, that's and as far as the cancer, um I have a really dear friend who I've only met in person once, and she works with people in their homes who are need care in their homes. And she goes and does periods of time. And she's done some death doula work. And when I was first diagnosed, lots of people were saying to me, you can beat this, you can win, you can kick that cancer to the curb and blah, 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 you can fight this. And I just immediately, with all that coming at me, I thought to myself, that is the last thing I need to do. I am
Mm.
so tired of fighting. I have been fighting this or that or the other thing all my life, and I am ready to stop fighting. I have to stop fighting.
Mm.
And people were saying um, that they were going to pray for me. And I was like, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the prayers. And I said, and I actually know what I want you to pray for me. Do you want to know what it is? And they were quite interested. Yeah, I want to know. And I said, please pray for me that whatever journey I have ahead of me, I will continue to be me, no matter what. That when you come to visit me, you will be visiting essentially the spirit of who I am, and that I don't lose that,
Mm.
that I don't hand over the reins to anybody else about how I'm living my life. And this friend of mine um, gave me some advice, and she said, Sharon, don't ever refer to the cancer as my cancer, because like that kind of gives the feeling that I own it, I'm attached to it, it's mine. And I thought that feels pretty good. Yeah, like it is. I have this cancer is here. Yeah, I can't ignore that. And then she said, cancer. This is how she explained it in a short message. Cancer. Think of the cells as, or they've been trying to help you, and they're trying to support the parts of you that they think you need help with. And you can just say, thank you for what you were doing to try to help me. And I'm ready to take care of myself now. So I don't need you anymore. And you can invite the cancer to leave. You don't need it anymore. It can go home. And that felt really helpful,
Mm.
you know, a different way of looking at it. I guess it's
Mhm.
acceptance. There's
Yeah.
something, and I don't think that it couldn't disappear, but I'm not going to sit around holding my breath waiting for it to disappear. I'm not going to put my life on hold until it disappears, you know?
Mm.
And yeah, they recommended two different drugs or medications, and one of them, they didn't call it a chemotherapy, they called it a targeted therapy. And I'm not here to give anybody advice about how you go about treating your cancer, or it's not yours. But if you are given a diagnosis, you've got to make your own decisions, and um, my mother had breast cancer. And she was more depressed about the treatment than she was about dying of cancer. She'd been depressed for years and suicidal my whole life. So dying was not the problem for her. It was, you know, the chemotherapy mainly, and radiation. She didn't like the idea of that. And I said to her then, Mom, they're just telling you what they have to sell you for your diagnosis. And it's for sale, but you don't have to buy it. You
Mm.
can decide what you want and what you don't want. And I think that helped her live 13 good years when she
Mm.
did that. She
Mm.
did. She spent the last 12 or 13 years of her life happier than she'd been since I was born.
Mm.
So I guess what I'm saying is, it's not about what is happening around you, or what, it's definitely what, not what you feel like is happening to you, that is going to give you, what is this about? A good life, a life well
Mm-hmm.
lived.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be what you choose to do with your life. What you bring through you to the world, that will hopefully let me lie down to die and feel good about the time I had here.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not think that I'm naive, because I'm not naive. I've worked with people in Cambodia who survived the Khmer Rouge. I've I'm a survivor of incest from my father. I I've been through some shit, and that's part of what has made my life amazing. And I ain't done yet.
Uh, oh, Sharon, thank you so much for your. That's just so much wisdom and tenderness in what you said. I mean, just so much about what's important about life. And you're very raw right now, and I can just feel the, as you said in the very beginning, the authenticity.
Mm.
I mean, just you said it, and you said authenticity is important, but you just exuded authenticity in your description of your experience and your sharing your experiences. And that's beautiful. I think it's a lesson for all of us. The value and the importance of authenticity to be, and I think what comes with that is there's a certain level of vulnerability. Being vulnerable like you're being, not just with me in this conversation, but with yourself. I mean, you can look at ourselves as many parts, many cells within one body, and to be vulnerable to those cells, to be open, um, to have love and compassion, like you mentioned, um, to and acceptance. It requires a amount of acceptance that you've articulated several times. And when you said that, acknowledging that there is suffering, that we're not going to be happy all the time, that's delusional. And to embrace it and to accept that, okay, then, there's a moment of suffering. There is suffering in my life. There's challenges. But how can I accept it? How can I be with it? How can I not necessarily attach myself to it? Like you mentioned with the cancer, you don't have to say it's mine. It's something else. Um, you stress the importance of, well, it's not something. It's something that you are experiencing. That is a part of your experience. It doesn't have to be. Uh, you don't have to identify with it, because I
It
think
doesn't have to define me.
exactly. Exactly. And I think it comes back to that authenticity. When you said that, when people ask to pray for you, you're like, well, pray that on myself, that spirit of me. And I think that that's also a part of that. Just because we have suffering in our lives, in your case, you have this cancer diagnosis, the spirit of you can still be there. You can still be your authentic self. You don't have to become something else because of a diagnosis. You can still be authentically Sharon, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just so many things that you said there that I'm trying to draw out.
Yeah.
And what you
My
said that they're
daughter,
so beautiful.
the daughter
Uh,
in Scotland, when I first, I have to tell you this little story about her
by
fiance,
all means,
Sharon, the
yeah.
power lifter. He lifts 370 kilos. there's 2.2 pounds per
I,
kilo.
I know.
That's
Jeez.
like 800 pounds. He's Scottish champion for several years. So, I mean, just to give you that information. So he's sitting next to Sarah. When I was on a video call, Dave and I called her to tell her about this diagnosis of stage 4 cancer. And it was just Sarah on the screen, but Kieran was sitting next to her. And he says to me and Dave, Mom and Dad, I have to tell you what Kieran just whispered in my ear after we told them about my stage 4 cancer. I'm going to cry. And she said, Kieran just whispered in my ear that he wishes he could be there with you two to hold Dad's hand.
Mm.
Now, I tell you what, I think she found a good man.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to be there to hold her dad's hand when her mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. That is amazing to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I was telling her that I was going to, I'd realized that I needed to enjoy my life and I needed to just like do the things I wanted to do and, let all the shit go essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Mom, when did you ever not do that? And I said, Well, I'm just warning you, honey. I'm going to turn it up a notch or two. So when she heard I was going to Tonga for 2 months, and I did that by myself, like I decided I actually needed some time by myself because I felt like I'm just thinking about everybody, my family, that this diagnosis is affecting, and I'm trying to sort of be the mom and take care of everybody. And I just needed some time for me. And it was a hard decision in some ways because I'm thinking I only have so much time left with my husband, who I love dearly, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I want to spend 2 months of it away from him on my own in Tonga, helping women with birth and swim with whales and whatever. Now, he was going to come join me at the end of it, but Sarah, that's the daughter, she says, Right, of course, mom's going to Tonga for 2 months, you know? But I knew I needed that for me. I just
Mm-hmm.
needed to go be me. And I experienced some really positive, beautiful things, and I experienced some horrific stuff. I was with a woman whose baby had died inside when she showed up at the hospital to be checked, and I supported her afterwards. And she calls me Nana, like grandma now, or yeah, like her grandmother, and she says that I saved her life.
Mm-hmm.
I just by being there with her. And I think I realized like you might not be able to do anything, you might not be able to fix it or change it, but if you sit with someone and you give your time and your attention and you are letting them know that you see them, like you really see them, and you acknowledge that they are worthy, what greater gift can you give?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do anything. Just be with someone. I guess it's like when they, what do they call it? Active listening, where you're just listening, not preparing a response, but you're just being with someone and connecting. You can save their life. I found out.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had some amazing positive. Like we had a woman who did housework and laundry for our family, and her name was Lua, and she made our experience of living in Tonga wonderful. She was such a blessing. Um, that my mother could do volunteer teaching at our school with kids that were struggling. And, my dad was a doctor, Peace Corps doctor in Tonga. That's why we were there. And I had, thought about this woman for years, like what happened to her when we left, because we left over 50 years ago in 1973. So I went back and I ended up connecting with a woman who was her mom and my mom were friends. And I was gathering with some of these friends of hers. And I said, I would love to find out what happened to Lua. And one of the women said, I'm Facebook friends with her daughter. And she's a nurse in Australia. And so I got her Facebook address and I wrote to Lua's daughter. And immediately I got back this big response about, oh my gosh, Sharon, we tried to find you. My mother talked about you and your family until she died. It turned out she died about 8 or 9 years ago. And she said, I own the house that was mom's. My brother and his wife live in the back on the property, and I own it. And you're welcome to stay there. You can go stay at mom's house. And I was in a guest house, and they cleaned. She said, I just got the floor of the shower tiled in the bathroom. You'll be the first to use it. And it wasn't the house that Lua lived in when we lived there, because it was really falling down, the house that she had lived in. And so they cleaned it all up because it's a bit dusty and whatever from the tile work, and they picked me up, her older brother, and I didn't know him as well because he was off at like a boarding high school when Lua worked for us. And they took me to the house, and they had cleaned up and made the bed in Lua's room, and her Lua's daughter-in-law said this was Lua's bedroom, and this is where she died. She died in this room. And I got to stay there for like 3 weeks, sleeping in Lua's bed. And there were pictures of Lua on the wall with her children and her grandchildren, and of her, parents and grandparents. And they told me about all of that. It was just like, whoa, so wonderful. So, it's about all of it.
Yeah.
It's about all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there because I was planning to go in September and swim with whales anyway. But I'd been there in March. I'd gone and spent just like 8 days there, like exploring about what might I do as a midwife in Tonga. And on one of the outer islands, I'd attended a clinic with a young woman doctor. And in that clinic, I'd met this pregnant woman. And she needed to go to the main island to have something checked out with her baby. So in the afternoon, I was on the ferry to go to the main island, and behind me, going up the ramp to get on the ferry, somebody says, "Can I help you with your bag?" And I turned around, and it was this woman, the pregnant woman. And I said, "Oh, hello," So we sat and talked the whole time on the ferry. It was about 2.5 hours. And it turned out that we had mutual friends. She's Baha'i, and she has mutual friends that I have visited in Samoa, another island. Anyway, we had this really lovely connection. And then we were communicating after I got back to New Zealand, and I said that I would love to be there when you have your baby, because she was due in August and I was planning to go in September anyway. And she said, come, come, yes, please come. And you can stay with me and my husband. And it was her first baby. She's a school teacher on an outer island. I mean, they're people from the States just don't know how basically people live in the world. You know, I, it's not that they're poor necessarily, they just don't have the money and the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, um, so I was there with her. She ended up having to go and be on the main island for the birth. Well, that's what they told her she had to do. And my hands were pretty tied for the birth. I was told, the hospital people are taking care of her. You're there as a support person if she chooses you to be there. And it was difficult. I just don't need to go into all the details because, yeah, just because. Anyway, so she's got this beautiful baby. She adopted a little boy who's just turned 12. So she's got a 12-year-old adopted son. And then she adopted him from her older sister when Taimani is her name. Taimani graduated from high school and adopted a baby from her older sister who was going overseas to work. And so just graduated single high school girl adopts a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And she met her husband when her adopted son was like between 2.5 and 3 years old. So her son Anisi now has a mom and a dad, and they were having their first baby. She's a school teacher, and they live in this little government provided house on the school grounds. And 9 years married, and they had wanted a baby the whole time, and they finally have a baby. And I was there for their son's birth, and it was just amazing to be invited into that space with them. And the baby's name is Masi, which is he's named after his father's father, who was born on Christmas and got named Kalisi Masi, which is Tongan for Christmas. So they named the baby Masi, the end part of Kalisi Masi, after granddad. And about 3 weeks ago, I got a message from her that she's adopted another baby and she's breastfeeding both of them. She's got a little girl now that, for whatever reasons, the mother, she said, didn't want, but it's more that she needed to go to work and already had two other children and just didn't think she could manage or couldn't. So she's adopted a 5-month-old and she's got a 2-month-old, and they're this, like, they look like twins. They're the same. And I know she knows what she's doing because she's done it before. There are amazing humans in this world.
Mm-hmm.
There are amazing humans in this world.
Wow, Sharon. Again, a lot of wisdom there. I think I love the how you shared the story of your daughter's soon-to-be husband.
Yeah.
Um, that again, it goes back to the story you said when you were there for someone giving birth and being with someone, being present with another person. Again, I think it comes to that authenticity, being authentically ourselves and being really present with another person, to be with them, to genuinely be with them. Like you said, you're not looking to score points. You're not looking to make an argument. You're not looking to counter what they're saying or contribute to what they're saying, but you're just there, just being present. I love how you said that. It can save someone's life. We don't even think about that. I think that's true. It could. Um, you gave an example of that. How important it is to be present with another person. And you said that from the beginning too, also about how important it is to be in loving relationships. I think it comes to love. I think it seems like love is a common theme here. To really genuinely love another person. The stories of this young woman adopting these kids. She has her own kid and she's willing to adopt another baby and breastfeed both at the same time. That's an act of love. That is an act of compassion for the other, for that parent who couldn't do that. I think as an act of compassion, what you've done. There's an act of just sheer. Yeah, I'm just gonna come back to love in relationships, in relating to another human being, and how important that is to living a good life. Just hearing, I can feel it. I can feel that, like, yes, that has a tremendous amount of value to hold another human being in your arms, to hold their hand, to hold them in this ultimate positive regard, to have genuine compassion for them. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful. It speaks to a life well lived. I think it feels that way to me that um, loving relationships is so vital to and doing being that way authentically.
Hmm.
Be Is so important and vital to a life well lived. Yeah, I think your stories are amazing. I think that your stories are that there's. I always say that there's so much wisdom in stories. You can feel it. It's like I can be there. I can feel. I can sense it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing those stories.
Um, when we, when at the end of my 2 months in Tonga, my husband and our oldest child, Adam, and a friend that he and I had studied physical therapy together, and his wife was in medical school. I found him on, you know, searching the internet, trying to find him recently. We'd lost touch with him for like almost 25 years. And when I found him in the last year, his wife, before I was diagnosed with cancer, I found him and connected, and we had a video chat and found out that his wife had been diagnosed with a really aggressive kind of brain cancer and died. And he was her caregiver until she died. She was a radiologist. Um, and then he kind of, well, my words are he went a bit AWOL and just did some traveling on his own around the world, really, like in a lot of the states, Canada. Um, and anyway, so he came to visit us, and the three of them came to Tonga: Dave, Gregory, and Adam. And one of the days that um, Gregory and Harriet is the name of the woman whose baby died that said I saved her life, that she calls me grandmother now. Um, we went to see, do some sightseeing and stuff together, just the three of us. And we went to this cave in Tonga. And I had been to the cave several times when I was a kid, and I went back once when my kids were little. But it's got a lake in the cave. And I had had my 10th birthday with some of my friends. There were like 5 or 6 of us girls, 10-year-olds, in this cave. And when I was a kid, over 50 years ago, you had to take like lanterns and stuff down and walk down this path and get in there. Now they've got lights in there. But we had taken this blow up raft kind of thing, and we were in the cave with our lanterns swimming, because you can swim in this cave, and it's like pitch black without your lights.
Hmm.
And we'd skinny dipped, me and my friends, the girls, for my 10th birthday. So we go back into this cave with Gregory, he's 71, I'm 61, and Harriet's 20, and she's just lost a baby. And so we're swimming in the cave, and when we got there, there were a whole bunch of teenagers, Tongan teenagers, and they were like hooting and hollering and jumping off of rocks into the lake and everything. And then they all kind of cleared out. So it was just the three of us left. And we were getting out because it was going to be closing time. And when we're getting out, I'm taking my bathing suit off, my wet bathing suit, kind of dark, whatever. And I was like, I got it off and I said, I just got to do this. And I jumped back in the water and I had one last swim around naked. And that was so fun. Like, you just got to grasp those moments and do those things sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know if you're going to get another chance. Don't waste time.
Mm.
You know, the thing about our life here is that we are given, at least in this body, this time around. I mean, I've lived where reincarnation, it's a fact of life in Cambodia. It's not whether you believe in it or not. It's a sort of like a fact of life. So I've lived in places where there's all different kinds of realities. Our reality is just what we believe sometimes, you know. But
Mm.
we have so much time and we don't know when it's going to end or how it's going to end. So it's like, I think of my time as money. Like, how do you want to spend your money?
Mm.
What do you want to do with it? And think outside the box. Do not be constricted by boxes. Everybody wants to put us in a box. No.
Mm. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I can say. I
You
keep
done?
saying that because I'm just, yeah. Again, being authentic and also seizing the moment in life, because you're right. We don't know when it's going to end. We have no idea. I guess it comes back to this is life is precious. What am I doing with this precious life, this time that I have? Do I need to conform to a box, somebody else's box that I've adapted, that I've habituated in my mind? Or do I just like, I love that. I have this moment. I love the story you gave too about, skinny dipping in this water and you're like, and when you were young and like, you know what? I'm really feeling this right now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to, and it's just that freedom. It's like, I am going to be free of any box. I don't give a damn what someone says. I don't care what someone says right now. Who cares? And that's only something in my own mind anyway. Let me just go and have this experience and like, I have a moment of freedom. And I'm going to come back to, I'm using my words here to describe this, but it comes back to that authenticity again. I mean, this is a big take home for me in this conversation. Is being your authentic self, whatever that is, discovering whatever that is, and that spirit that we have. And yeah, you did it there.
The
And I
thing
think that's
is,
just
we're going
beautiful.
to spend more time with ourselves than anyone else. I mean, that's pretty
Yeah.
much, you can't argue with that, right? You're going to spend more time with yourself than with anybody else. So you might as well enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like I have fun.
Hmm.
Just I try to like get people out of their, a lot of people are just unconscious.
Hmm.
You know, say something. I always like to go through the take, where you're paying for something and there's a person instead of a machine that you scan your own stuff. Like, I like
Uh-huh.
to say something that, like, they're like, what? This crazy old lady. Just wake up.
Hmm.
And I've thought about whether I want to say anything about politics, but I think I want to say a little something about politics because it's a
Hmm.
big thing right now. And I'm, religion, politics, we probably should avoid some topics, but I am concerned about how we are all taking sides and we're all picking our side, and it's becoming more and more divisive.
Mm-hmm.
It's between neighbors, it's family members, even people in the same house
Mm-hmm.
can have opposing views on stuff. And it's almost like, this is my take on it. It's like there is a civil war going on. It is already happening again. And it's not that there's the South and the North. It's like looking in a petri dish and you see the little amoebas, all through the petri dish, and there's the blues and the reds, and they are all fighting each other. And I don't want to participate in that. I've got my views, and people share with me their views. And it just, even we stopped the car the other day in New Zealand because we needed to tie something down we had our son's worm farm in the back of my station wagon to take back to him because he's moved. And, we didn't want that tipping over in the back of the car, a worm farm full of compost stuff. So we stopped, and some lovely New Zealander and his wife stopped to see if we needed any help, right? Wonderful. And within less than 10 minutes, US politics came up, and he starts saying what he thinks. And I have strong feelings, but I just said, look, these issues are causing so much divisiveness, not only in the States, but in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a part of that. Thank you so much for stopping and, seeing if we needed any help. And he said, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when you come up against somebody or a situation where, you just feel that this fight is about to start. What do you want to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
We're all human. We all have ideas. We all have been groomed to have the perspective that we have from
Yeah.
our family, from the experiences we had of being bullied in school, or not accepted into that circle, or not picked for that team, or not given that job. Well, what is it that we're going to lie down and die and feel okay about ourselves? That we won an argument with our neighbor and told them that, convinced them that they were wrong and I was right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Absolutely.
But it ain't easy.
Mm-mm. I'm so glad. I just love how you just did that. I think the way you just talked about politics is what this podcast is all about. It's a big piece of it. A big piece of me starting this podcast. I've had ideas about doing a podcast prior to this, and it was mostly about interviewing people, of course, focusing on with the attention on the good, ultimate good, and interviewing people, thought leaders about their books and all this kind of stuff about this, well-being of some sort and spirituality, etc. And then with all of this divisiveness, the lack of willingness to have a conversation with each other, to the focus on our differences, the focus on the negativity. I know we have that bias as a human being, but somebody got to do something to try to hold a container to inspire a conversation about. We all have an interest, I would think, in our own way. Now, I may have very different ideas than some other folks, but I think that there is a common interest in the good in some capacity. Not everybody. There are people out here who are just awful. We know that. But for a lot of human beings, most human beings, I could say, they're interested in a life well lived to some capacity. Now, it may be skewed because of our conditioning. It may be some people have weird ideas about what that means. But I think it's important to have that conversation. We may have different political views, may have different views on particular subjects, but can we have a conversation exploring with each other what is your idea of what the good is or what a good life represents? Let me share with you my idea of what a good life represents. Oh, we have something in common here. Now, I this is the way think it should go. What way do you think it should go? I just don't even think that's on the table. Because
A
some of
lot of
these,
people, I think, have lost their way.
exactly, that's not
They've
even on
just
the
lost their
table.
way.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking as you were talking about a young man that I had in my car. I was taking, I don't want to say too much because of confidentiality,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't have a very good opinion of this young man, right? He had just gotten out of prison. He's, tattooed up with gang tattoos, and he has a protection order, and the person he's got the protection order to stay away from is in the car as well with me. I'm giving them a ride, and I know them. Anyway, he started telling me about how he had only ever met his father when he was a little kid, maybe twice,
Mm-hmm.
between when he was born and he was 2 or 3 years old. He didn't remember it, but he apparently had. And then he said that when he was 18, his dad came to him and wanted to do a paternity test to see if he really was his dad's kid. And he said, so we did the paternity testing, and it proved that he was my dad, biological father. And that's the last I've seen of him. And this man is 33 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so you've been abandoned by your father twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to have a little bit of compassion for him.
Yeah. There you brought the compassion in again. Exactly.
How
And
bad would
again,
that feel?
yeah, yeah. And I think you're
We
right. I like that. Yeah,
we all just want to be loved.
yeah. I believe that. Again, now there are a handful that don't, but and then
Well,
if they've
maybe
got to
they
that,
do. Maybe
yeah,
they
but
do, but they just think that they're not worthy and it ain't ever going to happen. So they're going
that's
to
it.
be
Yeah,
angry and aggressive because they can do that.
exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Exactly. And the reason why they may feel that way is because of we don't know what traumas they've gone through. A lot of people. I mean, you're a midwife. You may not be aware of this, but a lot of people are not wanted. They were never wanted from the very beginning, and that's I won't get into the politics of this. That's why a
That's
woman's choice
sad
is
but true.
important. It's sad, but it's true. But that's why choice is important. That's important because an unwanted child, that's a torturous thing to go through, and later in life they have issues and concerns in their relationship with the world, and it's hard for them to have a vision of a good life because they feel like they don't feel like they deserve it. And we have to understand that and be sensitive to that. And I think that's why it's important to have I feel these types of conversations, because these conversations can say, okay, then what kind of conditions, what favorable conditions can we create, not just for ourselves, but for our society, for a way of thinking about ourselves as a collective, that mitigates that kind of stuff, that increases the likelihood of a person feeling like they are worthy of a good life. They are worthy of a life well lived. So this has been awesome,
Yeah, I just want to
Sharon.
finish with two things. I just pulled this out,
Oh,
and
great.
this little book I put together years ago, and I give it to every woman I take care of,
Mm-hmm.
and that was cupcakes from my 50th birthday party that had babies sleeping on the top with, so we had all
Oh,
different
awesome.
ethnicities mixed up in there. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
there's two things in here when you're talking about that. I've got a page, a little story about when I compete for Miss Universe. And they asked me the one question, what could I do to make the world be a better place? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
standing at the podium, for the interview questions for Miss Universe. I'm going to say that in order to make the world a better place, it's for every child born to be a wanted child.
Yeah.
What would that do to change things?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I've got in here, there's this little quote from Mother Teresa, and it says, even the rich are hungry for love, for being cared for being wanted, for having someone to call their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yes.
sometimes wonder about some of the politicians or people in leadership roles running the world, and like, what did they not get? What's missing
Yep.
in their life? What
Exactly.
happened when they were born? Who held them when they were crying in the night and they were a baby?
Yeah.
Who fed them?
Hmm.
Who held them?
Yeah. Beautiful, Sharon. This has just been amazing. I can't agree with that more. Yes. And audience, I hope you've gleaned this wisdom from this beautiful woman who shared her stories, her experiences with you all, with us. I'm just very grateful for you, Sharon. I know that you just gave that, but I still like to ask this question because I don't know what might pop up now. Are there any final words that you would like to leave the audience with?
Figure out who you would like to spend your time with, because it's you. And who do you want to be in the world? Do you want to be somebody that you hang out with, or do you be the person that you can love and know that you're worthy?
Thank you so much, Sharon, for all of it. I'm
And
speechless.
thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me. I hope I've shared something worthwhile.
Oh, absolutely. You have, from my perspective. I'm speechless. And yeah, I adore you. You're a gift to the world. And I really appreciate what you've had to share today. And I'm indeed very grateful. So,
We'll be friends forever now.
I know.
Come to New Zealand. We'll go swim with the
uh,
whales in Tonga.
oh, you got to get me swimming. That's a whole different story. So, all right. Take care. And
Okay. Thank
I
you.
love you. Thank
I love
you.
you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.